everyone, it's Dr. Russell. So March is National Endometriosis Awareness Month. This is a condition that affects 1 in 10 women. It's definitely more associated with infertility, painful periods, painful bowel movements, painful intercourse, lots of pain, and really heavy bleeding. A lot of times women don't know that they even have it and go undiagnosed for many years. I do have another video that I can share a link below that I've talked about more in depth about endometriosis. So I really wanted to focus today on talking about some tips that can be used to help with endometriosis. So to start though, I just want to briefly touch on some reasons why we think it happens. So we don't still know for sure, unfortunately, why endometriosis occurs, but some theories have to do with higher levels of estrogen as well as possible lower levels of progesterone. So that kind of shifts that ratio of estrogen to progesterone. Some other things that are very common, which is common for a lot of conditions in general, is just increased inflammation. So when we talk about any of these treatments, we're going to focus on hormone balance with general hormone balance, as well as liver support, since that's important for hormone balance, as well as reducing inflammation. And there's some studies that even suggest endometriosis is more like an autoimmune condition and resembles that in a lot of ways than a different kind of condition. So that's kind of the main focus of treatments. So for today's tips, I have 5 tips I'm going to share. So the first one is really combating and reducing that inflammation, and that is getting more omega-3s. So whether that's through food that you're eating with fatty fish or walnuts or things like that, or just taking a supplement, which honestly a lot of times is easier nowadays, getting really high levels of that EPA and DHA, so the more active forms of omega-3s, than kind of a generic omega-3 supplement that doesn't really tell you what's in it. So for endometriosis, I would do at probably closer to 2,000 milligrams total of the EPA, DHA. Obviously you want to talk to your doctor about specifics, but definitely more on the higher end of dosing, which you can go much higher than that if needed, but definitely helping to reduce those increase those omega-3s to reduce the ratio of omega-6. So we're going to promote more of that anti-inflammatory pathways. So that's number 1, increase omega-3s, whether that's through nutrition or through supplements or both. That is a great way to start. The second tip that I have that I've talked about a lot with other conditions, so it's something obviously I use a lot with, is castor oil packs. So as we've talked about in other videos, castor oil packs over the liver, which is on your right side below, kind of under your rib cage and a little bit below it. So that really helps reduce inflammation in the liver, and the liver is what's responsible for processing all these hormones and inflammation markers. So the more support you can give to your good old liver, the better off hormone balance is going to be. So I have another video I can share a link to on how to do those, but they're really simple and over time can be really helpful to help with hormone balancing. The number 3 tip, which everyone's going to hate me for this one, is to reduce caffeine. So caffeine has been shown for women with endometriosis and other inflammatory conditions a lot of times to be more inflammation promoting. Again, it is something that the liver has to process. So if your liver is already having trouble with the hormones it has, adding more caffeine and coffee can be really just adding more insult to injury. So if you find that you have endometriosis and you drink a ton of coffee, even if you drink a cup or 2 a day, that might be something you want to try quitting for a little bit, even just a month, and seeing how your next cycle is, because it really can make a big difference. I've seen it time and again for a lot of my patients that caffeine can have a big impact. So it's something important to consider. So that's tip 3, eliminate caffeine. And then tip 4 is an herb that, while we're working on the reason of why the endometriosis is happening and getting rid of that root cause, there are still times where you're going to have pain and things like that. So having some natural band-aids can be really helpful. So one of that is using an herb called Cramp Bark, and it does exactly like what it says. It helps with cramps and pain. You can use it as a tincture. You would just do a couple drops, anywhere from 5 to 20 drops a few times a day as needed, or you could do it as a capsule, so it does come as a powdered herb. There is a product called Cramp Bark Extra, so it's got cramp bark and then it has some other things like magnesium and other stuff to help with pain. It's by Vitanica. I have no affiliation, but that is one that's kind of nice. Instead of the drops, they can taste pretty intense, so definitely an easier way to go. You do want to stick with the lower dosing with the cramp bark just because it is really potent, and if you do go in higher amounts, it can cause nausea and vomiting, so definitely don't want to add that on top of already having a painful period. So stick with lower dose of cramp bark, but it can be really effective in some women more than Midol or Motrin, you know, if you especially want to go the natural route for supporting your body instead of, you know, going with the medication route. The only people that should avoid it would be with kidney stones. Otherwise, everyone, as long as you stay at that low dosing, it's okay to use. And then my fifth and final tip, and this is more of a broad strokes kind of tip, is to reduce what's called xenoestrogens. So those are estrogens that we get from outside the body. They're called endocrine disruptors, and they can come in all forms of through plastics, through Teflon pans, through even in the water. So there's lots of chemicals, unfortunately, now that basically mimic estrogens. So even though your body isn't making those estrogens, they're in your system and pretending, and they look like estrogen. So your body is confused and think it has more estrogen than it really does. So it is, as you probably are aware, there's chemicals in everything. I mean, in makeup, like I just said, cookware, plastics, which are ubiquitous throughout our society. So even just starting small with maybe getting a water filter, or, you know, changing out from plastic to using glass or metal for, you know, storage or things like that, or getting rid of your Teflon, nonstick cookware. Just start somewhere and kind of go from there. But as you start paying attention and noticing, there are lots of endocrine disruptors everywhere, and that's important for a lot of autoimmune conditions, even thyroid, things like that. So it's not just for endometriosis, but, you know, reducing that load overall can be really helpful. So that's the 5 tips. So again, we've got the omega-3s, we've got castor oil packs, we've got to reduce or eliminate coffee, cramp bark if you need it, and then reduce your exposure to exogenous or xenoestrogens. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to answer those.